Whether they just make an already creepy moment even more unsettling, change the way you think about a rather impressive stunt, or force you to pay closer attention to the things lurking in the background. There's no denying that these horror movies will never be the same once you make it to the end of this very list. So, as a sequel to an equally interesting What Culture Horror list that we've done before, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 more horror movie moments impossible to watch the same after this video. Number 10. Rebecca Ferguson was fighting tears during a scene with Jacob Tremblay, Dr. Sleep. Of all the creepy moments that went down during the shining sequel that was Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep, perhaps the one that stuck with viewers the most was the sequence involving young Bradley Trevor being tortured and killed by the True Knot. It's an absolutely horrific moment, with the terrific Jacob Tremblay producing some of the most disturbing cries of pain and fear that will ever pierce your ears. This was apparently something that had quite the effect on his co-star too, Rebecca Ferguson. Though the Rose the Hat actor was initially quite confident she'd be able to get through the traumatic scene due to it all being, just acting, Tremblay's deeply believable work swiftly left her fighting tears for real as Rose extracted his steam. In fact, Ferguson would even tell Real Blend that she was forced to wipe tears away as the pair were shooting a profile shot together. If knowing that the actor who was supposed to be despicably putting this child character through hell was actually doing all she could to keep it together and not ruin the scene doesn't change the way you watch this moment, then maybe knowing that an unfazed Tremblay hilariously snapped out of the ordeal once cut had been called and swiftly requested a Coke will. What a pro. And a pro who wanted his soda. Number 9. Put on that safety. Scream. Just when you thought you knew everything there was to know about Wes Craven's iconic first Scream movie, this entry is here to drop some more knowledge on you, so buckle up. There's a point there towards the end of the picture when Gale attempts to shoot the blokes behind Ghostface, Billy and Stu, but the weapon refuses to fire. Awkward. It's then stated by Billy that the safety was on, something Gale takes note of before eventually putting a bullet in him later on. With emotions so high as Billy reveals his motives to his girlfriend Sydney though, most likely completely missed the point where the safety was actually put on in the movie. Well, if you look closely, as Stu places down the weapon and goes to get Sydney's father, you can very much see the exact moment Matthew Lillard quickly adjusts the gun. It's a tiny little beat and one that has likely been overlooked by many for almost 3 decades. But that right there is the reason that Gale didn't immediately blow Billy's brains out on the first attempt. And Stu showing how to safely handle a gun here is now a detail that will forever stand out during a rewatch. You are welcome. Number 8. How a facehugger really tastes just makes the scene even more disgusting. Alien Romulus. The mouth-invading facehuggers return to screens in Alien Romulus, of course. During this recent movie though, not only do viewers see human victims simply being latched onto by these spider-like creatures, they're also made to witness some of the more gruesome details that occur during a face hug. Poor Archie Reno, who plays Tyler in the movie, is seen fighting off one of the aliens as it tries to stick a tube down his throat. And this moment was achieved via some quite horrid practical effects. In order to really make this sequence look as disgusting as possible, a ton of lube was used to lubricate the puppet. Sure enough, when asked what the whole invasive experience tasted like, Renault told comicbook.com that silicone was the first thing that came to mind. Yep, just when you thought watching a little monster trying to plant a chest burster inside a person couldn't get any more revolting, the lubed up truth only goes and makes the scene an even more nauseating watch. I love it. Now what's the most disgusting scene that you've ever seen in a horror movie? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 7, there are behind the scenes frames snuck into the water cube scene, Saw 5. Now this is a peculiar one. A horror series known for its wide array of barbaric and memorable traps, Saw 5 certainly did not disappoint with the reveal of a shocking water cube contraption, one that FBI agent Peter Strahm found himself locked inside. As Strahm fights to stay alive as the container swiftly fills with H2O, he eventually has the bright idea to give himself a tracheotomy with his pen, a move which actually saves his life in the end. Amidst all that water chaos though, there is actually a little detail which the average viewer has probably completely missed throughout this scene. The shot shots frantically change to really ramp up the intensity during the scene. But when the odd brighter shot of Strahm locked within the trap is shown for like a frame or two, what you're actually seeing here is behind the scenes footage of actor Scott Patterson being put within the box on set. Now, it does take a bit of slowing down to really catch those brief images. However, when comparing those shots to the behind the scenes footage showing exactly how they made the trap for the movie, it very much looks like the same people helping the actor on the day are somewhat visible for a little bit during the finished scene itself. And now you'll never be able to look at those flashes the same way again. Number 6, a secret Jason lurking in the kitchen. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. If you wanted a reason to be terrified during your next midnight snack run, then do we have the entry for you. During the disappointing 7th and not quite as rewatched entry in the beloved Friday the 13th horror franchise, Jason Voorhees returns for another killing spree, targeting everyone from telekinetic youngsters to hungry stoners. And you know what? The latter moment actually contained a quite interesting blink and you'll miss it moment, as David wanders around the kitchen looking for some grub in a thunderstorm. As the lightning flashes and lights up the dark room for a second or two, throw your eyes towards the left corner of the kitchen, and you'll actually see a familiar menace lurking in the shadows. The hockey-masked icon is shown creepily lurching towards the lad moments later before viciously stabbing David. So if for some reason you choose to revisit one of the less adored Friday the 13th tales during a stormy night, then knowing that Jason was actually watching from the second David stepped into the room here will definitely add an extra dose of eeriness to this fatal snack trip, that's for sure. Thanks for stopping by to have these horror movie moments changed for you forever. And if you like this kind of stuff, then hit the subscribe button down below and you will get more What Culture horror things in your life. A spooky life, that is. Number 5, James Lawrence was stuck to a table for 5 hours and peed in a cup for the ending. Frankenhooker. Another tale of an actor's experience probably changing the way you view a movie moment. James Lawrence had a rough old time filming the ending of 1990 horror black comedy Frankenhooker. Frank Henenlotter's tale of young scientist Jeffrey Franken trying to recreate his deceased girlfriend using the exploded pieces of hookers ends with, spoilers, the lad having his own head popped on top of a hooker's body in order to bring him back to life. It turns out in order to achieve the effect of Jeffrey's head being visible on top of the female body, Lawrence had to be stuck on a table for a whopping 5 hours. In fact, he was even left with no choice but to pee in coffee cups when he needed to go, due to being firmly secured in that table/prosthetic body combo. The things actors do for their art, eh? So the next time you introduce a pal to this shocking conclusion, it'll be impossible to not feel a little bit sorry for poor Lawrence here, and the awkward coffee cup moments he ultimately went through to bring this unorthodox ending to screens. We salute you, Lawrence. Number 4, all of the devil cameos throughout Longlegs. With Osgood Perkins' hit 2024 horror thriller Longlegs focusing on FBI agent Lee Harker trying to hunt down the titular satanic serial killer, the director actually decided to have the devil subtly cameo in the movie throughout. According to Perkins, these cameos are meant as a wink at the idea of satanic subliminal messaging, and the appearances happen more frequently as Harker is snuggling up against the revelation. And we will not tell you what that is here. While some of said appearances are a little more obvious than others, like the shadowy figure in the woods behind Longlegs early on, for example, and are a bit easier to spot during a first watch, others are not quite as evident. Satan can also secretly be seen watching over Harker in flashbacks as she listens to a 911 call towards the beginning of the movie, and even shows up for a moment in the reflection of the door window as she enters Agent William Carter's home for the jaw-dropping finale. And that's just a few of them. There's 15 plus of these cameos stuffed into the movie. Longlegs was already a movie capable of leaving you with many a chill, but being aware that Satan is lurking in more than a few scenes throughout will definitely make your next viewing even creepier. You are welcome. Number 3, an elvish sword helped Lee Pace do the champagne trick. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Helena Rain's house party game gone wrong horror comedy Bodies, Bodies, Bodies may not strike you as the sort of movie which is in any way connected to Middle-earth. Earth. But that beloved world actually helped create one specific moment in the movie. Lee Pace plays Greg in the film, the older person present at the get-together and boyfriend of podcaster Alice. And there's a scene there when he's required to slice off the top of a champagne bottle like the coolest man on the damn planet. This was done via no CGI assistance, folks, as Pace very much performed the action for real. To practice the moment, he also apparently spent some time doing that bottle trick at home. But who has a sword lying around the house to do such a balmy thing whenever they feel like it? The bloke who played Thranduil in the Hobbits movies, that's who. That's right, the sword that he managed to take home after bringing the father of Legolas to screens in those fantasy pictures helped prepare him for the moment he had to chop through the bubbles on the set of Bodies. As Pace put it, you know what, I don't get many chances to use this guy. So he jumped at the chance to go all Elven King on some champers. And now you'll never be able to unsee Pace cutting through bottles with an elvish blade whenever you watch the Body slice. Number 2, a trippy button you'll never unsee, Alien. Blasting back to the Alien franchise for this next entry, Ridley Scott's iconic first ever Xenomorph Nightmare is a film packed full of marvelous details. Perhaps one of the more overlooked sources of interesting information can be seen during the moment when Ripley initiates the Nostromo's self-destruct sequence towards the end of the movie. If you really focus on the buttons on the keypad she types on, a few quite strangely labeled buttons were visible. A Garrick fly conveniently placed beside the word trip certainly stands out during a rewatch, with the former being a reverse of the name also used for the psychedelic mushroom known as Amanita muscaria. Also, that same mushroom is the one that inspired the super mushroom seen in the Super Mario games. I mean, that alone is likely already enough to leave you lingering on this shot for a few extra moments and telling your pals about the Mario cameo in Alien during your next watch of the classic sci-fi horror. But elsewhere, the control panel also contains words like linger, yoni, and Shakti XS, with many of these being added after designer Simon Dealing was told by Scott to add in buttons that were complicated and interesting because they won't be on screen for more than a second or two. Influenced by the Secret Doctrine book he was reading by Russian occultist and philosopher Helena Blavatsky, with these pages trying to explain the evolution and origin of the universe through terms derived from the Hindu idea of cyclical development, Dealing took his inspiration from that book, and that's where these words came from. That's one way to change the way you look at a control panel. Number 1, Steven Seagal and the Goats, The Menu. If John Leguizamo's work throughout Mark Mylod's comedy horror The Menu feels a little familiar, well, there's a reason for that. According to the actor himself, he actually based his narcissistic and washed action star on none other than Steven Seagal, with Leguizamo telling Entertainment Weekly that he had a bad run-in with him when making Executive Decision, and he's kind of a horrible human being. Tell us how you really feel, John. But not only will you now find it difficult to get through The Menu again without seeing Leguizamo channeling his inner Seagal whenever he gets a chance to open his mouth, you'll also never be able to look at another being in this movie the same way either. You know those goats seen trotting in front of the guests as they make their way into the restaurant? Well, there is such a thing as Judas goats, animals that are often used to keep livestock calm as they're led to slaughterhouses. And that is pretty much exactly the same thing that these goats are doing in this deadly dinner experience when you think about it. So there you have it, there was a lot more to these goats, Leguizamo included, than you likely thought during your first watch of Slowick's Fatal Meal, with this additional information acting as a sprinkle of comical and unsettling seasoning respectively, which will certainly alter the way you consume your next sitting.